Go into the world and tell every man that you meet, there is a man on the cross.
A Catholic Take. What you need to know right now. A bold synthesis of inspiration and information. Keeping you up to date on the news and issues from a courageous Catholic perspective.
A Catholic Take with Joe McLean starts now.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean. It's great to be back on with you. Praise be to God. I was out yesterday. I got sick. Didn't even sleep the night before. It was a mess, a hot mess. So by the grace of God, we were able to just recover a little bit. But we're back today. And today we're talking about the war on abortion, the war on culture. From the wrong side. Whose side are you on? We're going to be talking about that today, of course. Michael Kenney is going to be on. He's the president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation. 2 years after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, what is the impact? What is the fallout? And what is the fight ahead? Planned Parenthood is dumping lots of money, millions and millions of dollars into the battleground states to fight for the reproductive rights. Well, it's time to take our stand. We're going to get that report from Michael Kenney at 14 past. Do join us if you can. And then we're going to be talking with the Verlander family from Fatima Farm, FatimaFarm.com. And they're back today, praise be to God. They have a new release, a new song, Dreamin' of My Lover. I'm going to be sharing that with you at 30 past the hour. Let's talk about music for the war on culture. Why should we take back music? Why should we leverage the power of music to win the culture wars, to raise our kids, to spread the good, the true, and the beautiful? That with the Verlander family coming up at 30 past the hour. So we'll be linking to everything we talk about today in the show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. And by the way, we're linking to a brand new merch. We have partnered with Nelson on a merch store. So we're going to be rolling out lots of merchandise, not only for the Station of the Cross, iCatholic Radio, but for A Catholic Take as well. So there's even going to be a second 2024 mug coming out through this new merch store linked up over at the stationofthecross.com/ACT. But you can find it CatholicToTheMax.com/ICR. Let's pray. Let's begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thine intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly unto thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my mother. To thee do I come, before thee I stand sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And now your saint of the day.
Saint William of Vercelli, pray for us. William was born in the year of our Lord 1085 to a noble northern Italian family. At the age of 14, in a single tunic, a heavy chain, and bare feet, the pious youth undertook the famed pilgrimage of the Camino di Santiago, or Way of St. James. After returning to Italy, William spent some time as a hermit, but when he gained attention for working a miracle, he tried to leave on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. God intervened and directed the saint to begin what became the monastery of Montevergine near Benevento. He founded several other monasteries and continued to work miracles. While William was plowing one day, a wolf appeared and killed his donkey. William immediately ordered the wolf to take the donkey's place, and the wolf tamely obeyed. When William traveled to advise King Roger the Great of Sicily, a courtesan attempted to seduce him. In response, the holy abbot spread burning coals on the ground and lay atop them, though he remained unharmed. Hearing of this miracle, King Roger had a monastery built near his palace so that William could stay close by. William died in Campania in the year of our Lord 1142. The Williamites, as his monks were known, eventually merged into a larger Benedictine order. For more about the saints and seasons of the Catholic Church, visit thestationofthecross.com/saints-and-seasons. St. William the Abbot, pray for us.
And now your headline news. The Hill reports Senate Democrats unveil Roe reversal anniversary ad blitz. Senate Democrats on Monday released a series of ads targeting GOP Senate candidates' records on reproductive rights in the wake of the second anniversary of the Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, or the DSSCC's new ad blitz, is slated to reach voters in 10 states on lifestyle, beauty, fashion, and recipe websites. The DSCC chair, Senator Gary Peters from Michigan, said in his statement Monday, quote, "Every Republican Senate candidate poses a threat to women's freedoms, rights, and health," close quote. Well, you would hope so anyway. The Pillar reports breakaway Spanish nuns excommunicated. The Archdiocese of Burgos said June 22nd that a decree of excommunication signed by its Archbishop Mario Aceta had been sent to the 10 members of the Poor Clare community in the northern Spanish village of Belorado. The Archdiocese said the decree was issued after church officials received a registered fax June 21st, signed by the 10 nuns, rejecting a summons to appear before a tribunal the same day to answer the charge of schism. The 10 nuns, who belong to a 16-member community, said in the fax that they had already disassociated themselves from the Conciliar Church in May, when they signed a 70-page Catholic manifesto describing the post-Vatican II Catholic Church as illegitimate. The Burgos Archdiocese is preparing for the possibility that the case will go to the Spanish courts. The Archdiocese has not set a deadline for the 10 nuns' departure. Wait, they're still faxing people? That's interesting. Catholic Vote reports majority of U.S. Jesuit universities promoted Pride Month. Over half of Jesuit universities in the United States promoted Pride Month this year, despite their claim to historic Catholic identities. The Catholic Fix reported that 15 of the 27 Jesuit universities posted pro-LGBT messages on social media this month, while several other Jesuit schools did not promote Pride on social media. They still, however, actively hosted pro-LGBT events. So far, there are no reports of registered faxes, of excommunications from any of the host dioceses of these Jesuit universities. And those are your headline news. The gospel today comes to us from Matthew chapter 7, verses 6, and then again from 12 through 14. Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, or throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them underfoot and turn and tear you to pieces. Do to others whatever you would have them do to you. This is the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road broad that leads to destruction, and those who enter through it are many. How narrow the gate and constricted the road that leads to life, and those who find it are few." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Father Haydock said back in the 19th century, the sacred mysteries should not be given to those that are not properly instructed in the sublime nature of them. Nor should we hold any communication of religion with those that are enemies to the truths of Christ, which they tread under their feet and treat contemptuously, and will be so far from having any more friendship for you on account of such a criminal complacence, that it is more probable that they will betray you and turn against you. Close quote, Father Haydock. St. Jerome would say, attend to the words, for they have a special force. Many walk in the broad way, few find the narrow way. For the broad way needs no search and is not found, but presents itself readily. It is the way of all who go astray. Whereas the narrow way, neither do all find, nor when they have found do they straightway walk therein. Many after they have found the way of truth, caught by the pleasures of the world, desert it midway. Close quote, St. Jerome. The great commentary of Cornelius a Lapide would say, for strait is the gate. This is the voice of eternal wisdom. He then who is wise and will set himself in earnest to save his soul, let him take the narrow way. The measure of this straightness and narrowness of the way to heaven and the fewness of those who find it and are saved, you may gather from the types. First, there is Lot, who only with his 2 daughters escaped from the burning of Sodom and of the other cities of the plain, when all the rest were burnt up because of their lusts. For the world is like Sodom. It is inflamed with lusts and passions. Wherefore the greater part of the lost are damned on account of pollutions and lusts. The second type is the deluge. From this Noah only with 7 souls escaped. The deluge swallowed up all the rest on account of their sins. In the world is a deluge of iniquity, and thus of punishments and all calamities. The third was the entrance into the promised land, which was a type of heaven. Into this, of 600,000 Israelites, there entered but 2, Caleb and Joshua. All this is taught too by the infallible words of Christ. Many are called, but few chosen. Wisely does Cassian advise, live with the poor that thou mayest deserve to be found and saved amongst the few. Close quote. Cornelius a Lapide. It's stark and it's clear. Choose the narrow way. The world, the flesh, and the devil, they have nothing but pain and suffering and eternal damnation to offer. Reject it. Plant the seed in your heart and in the hearts of your friends and your family while you still can. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's great to be on with you. Praise be to God. Hey, coming up at 30 past the hour, we're going to have a conversation with Michael and his daughter, Mary Verlander, from Fatima Farm, FatimaFarm.com. They're back. Let's talk about the power of music in the culture war that we seem to be finding ourselves in. Why is it important to basically make a reconquista of music, to leverage the power of music to win this culture battle, and what does it mean for your family? And we're going to have that conversation with the Verlanders. I'm going to share a little bit of their latest release with you at 30 past the hour. Do join us if you can. There are lots of stories in the news that are of great concern to us, and I'm sure they are to you as well. We're going to link to everything in the show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But the fact that the Roe v. Wade is coming up on its 2nd anniversary doesn't mean that the fight for life is over. I guess it's just beginning, really. And we're going to have a conversation about this right now because Planned Parenthood is putting millions of dollars into the battleground states to come out swinging in hopes of reestablishing the national abortion mandate across our country. We have invited Michael Kenney to be on the team today. He's a writer, producer, educator. He's also not only an attorney, but he's the president of Pro-Life Partners Foundation, and he's been a pro-life warrior and Catholic for decades. He joins us now. Michael Kenney, good morning to you. Thank you for your time.
Joe, it is an honor to be on your show. Thanks for the opportunity.
Praise be to God. We are happy to have you. Let's talk about the fallout, 2-year anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. What has been the impact, the fallout, and what is the fight ahead?
Excellent question. The fallout has been sort of a push-pull. I would say you correctly characterized the Planned Parenthood side. Once the Supreme Court corrected its horrific mistake, everyone understands that there was no basis for a constitutional right to end the life of a preborn child. Once the abortion industry understood that they were no longer going to be able to sort of exert that false right, they then scrambled with all their allies and their political power forces to say, well, we're going to do exactly what you said, Joe, which is we're going to go across the country and steamroll the states and impose a sort of state constitution, state-by-state right to abortion, essentially reintroducing this false regime that the Supreme Court said doesn't exist in Roe. This idea that there's some kind of right to privacy that would include the right to end the life of a preborn child. So that caused the pro-life side to have to recalibrate and think about how do we respond to this sort of new landscape. And from that, there have been a number of really creative initiatives, one that just occurred this past weekend that I'd be happy to describe as an illustration.
Yeah, please do. This is the conference that took place in D.C.?
Yes. Yeah, it's called the Celebrate Life Weekend. And the idea behind that, Joe, is that we want to celebrate the overturning of Roe. We want the March for Life to continue in January. That's an important step in the process, a huge step that needs to consistently be memorialized. But it's also important to pivot now that the Supreme Court has recognized that there is no right to kill a preborn child. We have to educate the country to the reality that the 14th Amendment, which includes the Equal Protection Clause, applies to all human beings in our society at every stage in life. And so what better location to do that than at the base of the Lincoln Memorial, which was the last time in our history when we had to recalibrate about who are we protecting under law. And, of course, all human beings have to be protected. Otherwise, there's a grave human rights injustice.
One thing that interests me, and I'd love to get your take on this, the pro-life movement is made up of an eclectic bunch. People from all walks of life, from all religions, from both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And sometimes they get along and sometimes they don't. What is your take on the state of the pro-life movement today? How well and how coordinated, how cooperative is the various factions within the pro-life group to continue this battle?
Yeah, great question, Joe. I think that, sometimes when new circumstances arise, it provides an opportunity for human beings to work together in a whole new and fresh way. The idea behind Pro-Life Partners Foundation is to be an entity that can help facilitate the collaboration that is so essential. We face it's similar to the way the Constitution designed our government system. When you want to be a collective that's represented by various political figures, it's a combination of what we would say in the Catholic world of two paradoxical concepts. One, subsidiarity, where you're working locally, you're using all the ingenuity and addressing the issues closest to the problem, but also solidarity, where you're working as one, this many different, as you say, backgrounds and so forth, but united in certain core principles. And so I think in this new landscape, we're in that environment where there's a real opportunity for leaders across the board to continue to vibrantly do what they do well. We have over 3,000 pregnancy help centers. We have hundreds of pro-life organizations with very creative missions. But now is the time really to also think about what are the core principles that allow us to message correctly, message consistently, to equip public figures to speak consistently, and that's a process that's being kind of formulated as we speak.
One of the things I continually get frustrated with, and my audience will be the first to tell you how much I complain about it, is the so-called conservatives that don't conserve much anymore, especially the right to life. And this election cycle, surprisingly, IVF is on the ticket. We're talking about in vitro fertilization in a way we've never talked about before in this country, and I find that fascinating. And then we find so-called conservatives that seem to want to enshrine IVF as a right, so to speak, almost like the liberals talk of abortion in our country. I find that troubling as a Catholic, as 100% almost of all of those embryos that don't get selected, end up dying as a result. How do we fight that battle in the pro-life movement?
Great question, Joe. And this is where these identification of core principles have got to be embraced and articulated. And one of those has to do with, a human being that exists, and in whatever way in which that human being came about, has the right to be born, to live. The challenge, of course, as Catholics, we understand that there are ways in which human beings come into existence that are not licit. They're not morally licit. And one of those is the IVF process. So on the one hand, we don't want to be encouraging the process which creates thousands of human beings, unfortunately, many of which are not allowed to progress to life. But on the other hand, once they exist, we've got to figure out ways to rescue and enable these human beings to be adopted. It's a very difficult situation but I would say there are some people around the country who are well schooled in this. Pro-Life Partners Foundation is in a position to help think this through with experts. Europe is ahead of us in terms of the law. They have stricter ways in which the IVF industry is regulated, such that only married couples in some cases are permitted to have an embryo they've created in this process. Again, nothing that we would want to encourage because it's not a illicit process, but at least they're limiting the number of human beings that are created and then an opportunity for embryos to be adopted. There's a lot of discussion. I think what's happened politically is because Alabama's Supreme Court did the right thing, saying that this is a human being that was lost in that transfer, it caused politicians to overreact and say, oh my gosh, I'm concerned that I'm not going to be reelected unless I support this industry, as opposed to taking it in a more comprehensive analytical process of breaking down the various dimensions of this. So it's a big topic that would take several shows to break out, I think.
I think Planned Parenthood is not going to sit around on the laurels, as you've already articulated. They are getting very aggressive to push back on this election cycle in hopes of winning more voters over to their cause, re-enshrining abortion as the law of the land. And yet, I think part of that shift that they have done strategically has gone to abortifacients like the pills, right? So the morning after pills, things like this, chemical abortions through mail. And I'm going to be having a guest later this week and I've talked to a whistleblower by phone just the other day about the abortifacients that end up in our water system. And you've been a producer on the film, about
Unplanned.
Unplanned. Thank you. Yeah, you did. You were the producer on Unplanned, and there was. We remember the most difficult graphic scene of that film.
Yep.
Was Abby pouring down this stuff in the toilet? Well, that ends up in our water systems. Tell me about that. Planned Parenthood doesn't really need brick and mortar abortion facilities anymore to continue to abort millions of children every year.
Right, Joe. I think this is a point where we can adjust to these environmental circumstances. When I say that in terms of this issue, but also environmental in terms of the impact on our environment. And so, Students for Life in particular, Kristen Hawkins would be a good guest to bring on. They're doing a lot of good work, pointing out particularly to the younger generation who understand and have a great affection for the environment generally. And Pope Benedict XVI wrote on this very, very well. His last encyclical was particularly eloquent on this. But we can use environmental principles to help awaken our culture to the importance of protecting all environments, including the environment in the womb. But there's also this adverse, you're putting these permanent chemicals into the water system, and, of course, the horrific reality of human body parts being placed into the water system. So I'm hoping that this can be a way in which we can further awaken our culture to say this has got to stop. This is endangering the whole culture because of the pollutants in the water system that become part of the drinking water system.
Yeah, it's gross to say the least. More on that later this week. Michael Kenney, before we run out of time with you, I want to ask you, what is the most important thing as Catholics, as pro-life warriors, we can do right now to further the cause?
The great question, Joe. And this is foundationally a spiritual warfare, and it's very, we know from our understanding of Catholicism that there are certain evils that can only be eradicated through both prayer and fasting. And so I think we're being called to a higher level of engagement with our walk with Christ. We have to implement these kinds of disciplines first and foremost, and then that equips us to be in a position to hopefully have Christ working through us, the Holy Spirit working through us to articulate the arguments that will both change the mind, but also, more importantly, the hardened hearts, because we're dealing with a lifestyle that is generating the need for abortion. And 85% of abortions occur on women who are not married. So, number one, if you simply live a virtuous lifestyle, we'd eliminate 85% of the abortions. So that's just one example.
Pro-Life Partners Foundation. We're down to the last 60 seconds here with Michael Kenney, who's the president of this. Michael Kenney, we're grateful for your time today. ProLifePartnersFoundation.org. I'm going to give you a really quick, just a few seconds here, but you've got some videos there that you want us to share.
Yes, please go to our landing page, and you'll find a button on there with 11 different videos that are research-based, and we've just created them for the entire pro-life movement. People of all good faith, simply download those and seed the entire country with these true stories that are designed to shape hearts and minds. You can also go to AmericanProLifeMovement.com, but Pro-Life Partners Foundation has it right there on the homepage. Thank you so much, Joe, for this opportunity.
Michael Kenney, God bless you. God love you. We'd love to have you back. ProLifePartnersFoundation.org. Put a link to it in the show notes. We'll be right back. Michael and Mary Verlander are up about the power of music and the culture war next. Don't go anywhere.
Join us on Saturday, August 24th at the Niagara Falls Convention Center for a historic event, the 25th anniversary celebration of the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. You'll be inspired by our all-star lineup of renowned speakers: Raymond Arroyo, Candace Owens, Bishop Joseph Strickland, Mother Miriam, Father Robert McTagg, Jim Havens, and Joe McLean. Don't miss the chance to hear all these fantastic speakers at the general event. But wait, there's more. Register for the VIP Gala Dinner and mingle with all the guest speakers over hors d'oeuvres, cocktails, and a fabulous sit-down dinner. Plus, enjoy special bonus talks by Raymond Arroyo and Candace Owens. Tickets are limited, so secure your spot today at thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for celebrating our 25-year anniversary with us.
Praise be to Jesus Christ. Welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McLean, and here are your headline news. LifeSite News reports Democrat-run Vermont City sued for allowing non-citizens to vote in elections. Restoring Integrity and Trust in Elections, or RIGHT, filed the lawsuit last Tuesday against the city of Burlington for allowing non-citizens to vote in local city or Burlington School District elections. The lawsuit alleges that in doing so, the city violated voters' qualifications enshrined in the Vermont state constitution. Activists are working overtime to undermine democracy in Vermont by extending the right to vote to non-citizens, said Derek Loynes, president of RIGHT, in a press release. The office of Vermont Governor Phil Scott and Burlington Mayor Emma Mulvaney Stanek did not immediately respond to a request for comment. And CNA is reporting Pope Francis appoints Gonswine to diplomatic role in Baltic states. The Vatican announced Monday that Archbishop Georg Gonswine, the former private secretary to the late Pope Benedict XVI, will serve as the Apostolic Nuncio, or papal ambassador, to Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. The relationship between Gonswine and the current Pope has been notably strained. Just last year, Pope Francis instructed Gonswine to return to Germany, leaving him without any official role in the Church until now. The Baltic countries have a substantial Christian population. According to the Pew Research Center, 93% of Lithuanians are Christian, with 75% of adults identifying as Catholic. Latvia and Estonia, however, are considerable Orthodox and Lutheran populations, with Catholics only making up about 1%. All of which have a very low mass attendance rates. 7% of Catholics in Latvia and only 10% of Lithuanians say that they attend Mass weekly. So it's an uphill battle for sure. Breitbart reports Russia summons U.S. ambassador over Ukraine's alleged use of American missiles in Crimea strike. The Russian Foreign Ministry summoned the American ambassador on Monday to protest what it says was the use of U.S.-made advanced missiles in Ukrainian attack on Russian-annexed Crimea that reportedly killed 4 people and wounded more than 150. Washington has effectively become a party to the war on Ukraine's side, said the ministry in a statement, adding retaliatory measures will certainly follow. It did not elaborate. There was no immediate comment from the U.S. or Ukrainian officials, and the Associated Press could not independently verify Russia's claims about the missiles used. Yikes. Those are your headline news. By the way, today is my younger daughter, Mary Teresa's 13th birthday. I'd be grateful for your prayers for her. Praise be to God. Speaking of daughters, we're very grateful to have back on the team today Fatima, the Fatima Farm, FatimaFarm.com. We've had them on in the past. We're excited to have them back on the ongoing conversation about tradition and culture. And today, it's not just Michael Verlander, but it's his daughter, Mary Verlander, also joining us. Good morning to both of you. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Joe. It's good to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yes,
Praise be to God. It's good to have you back, Mary. It's good to meet you finally. Praise be to Jesus. I've enjoyed your work in the videos that you publish on your YouTube channel. Speaking of which, if it's okay with both of you, I want to play, I don't know, the first 30 seconds or so, maybe a minute of your most recent release, Dreaming of My Lover. So this is on the Fatima Farming YouTube channel, which we're going to put a link to. Highly encourage you to subscribe and to share it. Have a listen to this.
I did have lover, but she and I did part, and now I'll always miss her with this broken heart. Her cheeks were like a bunch of roses, her eyes, they shone like stars, but those roses, they have faded. This love of ours. Oh, love another. She will guide my hand. I'm dreaming of a lover in that glory land.
It's a great hit. I love it. It's toe tapping. It's my kind of tune. I got to be honest with you. So let's talk about the culture war and as far as music goes. Mary, I want to start with you. I've talked to your dad a number of times. I never got to talk to you before. So let's start with you, Mary. Why is music important to you? What has music been in the life of your family? How has that impacted you as you go in now that you're a young adult and you're facing the brave world in front of you? What has music played a role in that regard?
Well, most recently, especially coming back home from college, since me and my oldest brother haven't been home, I've come home to be very pleasantly surprised to find my younger siblings picking up instruments and playing and singing on their own. And so lately, I've just been coming home and being able to join that. Before it was me and my brother and my parents playing and singing these songs. And so music in our family especially, not that we were ever disconnected or anything, I don't think, but it's really been something that we've been able to do together and really enjoy together.
I got to visit your family while you were away at college. I got to stop by on a road trip and hang out, and my kids got to jam with your family. And I got to tell you, your younger siblings are incredibly talented. Very, very fun to play and to sing with them. And that was a special memory and experience that my family, I think, will keep for a long time. And I think there's something to that, right? Like the fact that you play with your siblings, the fact that music is an expression not just of your faith, but of your family life. It seems like that element might be lost in society today. Do you agree with that? And how do we win that back?
Well, being a good example, which is what me and my family have been trying to do for the last while. And when I've been off to college, meeting new friends, I've been trying to encourage them to pick up their own instruments to sing these songs. That's very important. It's one thing you can't really, I guess you could sing pop songs together, but that's just not the same thing at all. And I don't really think that's heading in the right direction. If you pick up these songs, which are a multi-generational traditional thing, which is supposed to connect the grandfather with the son, and the father with the son, it's something that anybody, any age can sing. You can harmonize together. Really, most of these songs, they're so simple and easy to sing and play. And another thing about these songs is that you don't necessarily have to sound or be very good at singing or playing. That's not the point of this music, and it's perfectly fine. I really enjoy playing with people who just put their heart into it and are trying, even if they're not strumming the right chords at the right times or hitting the right pitches or singing the harmonies quite right, I don't usually notice these things. I notice how much it's enjoyed and how much it can really mean to the people who are into it. And what I love the most is when people who are unfamiliar with this music might think it's uncool at first, start picking up a ukulele or a guitar for the first time and find themselves singing along to Will You Go Lassie or sea shanties or just the Irish songs and the old American songs.
We live in such a diverse culture, though, Michael. Let's get you in on this. Are all types of music, genres of music that we should be as Catholics focused on, trying to reconquer, to share the good, the true, and the beautiful? Or I think Mary sort of made this point that certain songs have a cultural connection that works and some don't. Would you agree with that?
I do, Joe. Well, we're trying to play our role in the revival of old songs. And so that's not only sacred music, but also folk music. So we're communicating that there's something worth preserving from the past. So much of what we hear, I think, on the internet and on TV and commercials, new is always better. Well, with folk music, we're singing songs, like Mary mentioned, that our grandparents know. So there's something worth preserving in the past. And so when we sing these songs early on with our children, that's communicated to them. And so when we go to church and they see something old there, they're already informed by the idea that something is worth preserving from the past. And even though this may seem old and I don't really understand it, but it's nevertheless important to me, and I think it's worth preserving, and we don't need to rewrite any of it. It's good as it is, and our job is to hand it on.
But there's so much pressure today, Michael, on getting rid of the old and out with the old and in with the new. It seems like within the church, within society itself, to do away with these rich traditions. How important is it for us to your point, to stand and defend these traditions?
I think it's incredibly important because it speaks to the very essence of what our Catholic faith is. That is, our Catholic faith isn't reinvented with each generation, but it's essentially a handing on of the deposit of the faith. Included in that is the tradition of faith and practices that come with that. And so the name of our band, sort of, if you can call it the name, we don't just say the Verlander family, but we say the Verlander family and friends. And it's not only just a uniting activity amongst our family, but it's also uniting activity among our family and friends as well, and others. So it begins in the living room, but it doesn't just stay here. We take it outside when we invite families over, and they join in on the music. And then every once in a while, like with the 4th of July coming up, we're going to go to downtown Noonan and play some American songs and draw the attention of some strangers as well.
Yeah, praise be to God. Mary, how much pressure is there on young men and women like yourself to go along with the culture? I mean, I think when we are careful about our peer groups and the places that we go or the schools that we attend, it's easier to manage that. But at the end of the day, we're surrounded by it constantly. So there's a lot of temptation and pressure. So how do you intend to deal with that? How do you intend to address that in your life as you get older?
Well, I'll admit it's hard, especially when going to a new place with a bunch of adults your age. And even when you're among a bunch of traditional Catholics, there is still a great pressure to sort of fit in, not to stand out too much. And some people within the traditional circles are cooler than others. And I found myself just struggling against, not really sure if I should tell them, no, that isn't good music. Let's play and listen to this. You can't really just do that. I've been trying to find this way to be an example and apply the right pressure. It also depends on the person you're with, where you see the good in what they're doing is, okay, give them credit for, okay, at least they're singing and playing the guitar. Most young men probably wouldn't do that. And then take the next step to, okay, after he's done with this song, I'm going to start another song from the folk song book, and maybe he'll join in. Small steps like that help and encourage others a lot. And just literally handing a ukulele to somebody and kind of just saying, hey, let me teach you a few chords. It's super easy. You need to invite others into what you're doing and to also show that you really, really enjoy what you're doing. It helps when you have friends who also enjoy playing and singing these songs, because when you're on your own, it's difficult, but it's definitely worth it. And I hope it's something that I'll stay strong in forever, just loving this music and passing it on to whomever I meet, and just being that girl that everyone knows as, oh, Mary Verlander, she's the folk song singer. I like that a lot.
If you're my age or you grew up in a homeschooling family, you've probably watched at least the first few seasons of Little House on the Prairie. And we all remember that even though they were hardworking farmers or whatever, they still could bust out the violin, the fiddle, or whatever, and still play a tune at night while they all danced around the campfire. That is lost in society, it seems. Like the average person cannot be doing these things. Not well, anyway. But we're at a break. We're talking with Michael and Mary Verlander. And they have a website. We're going to put a link to it, FatimaFarm.com. On the other side of the break, I do want to get into this movement that they've really helped to establish, and that is to win back the culture war, to bring back society, bring back their friends and their family, and engross them into the good, the true, and the beautiful of the Catholic faith through music, through tradition, and through community. An experiment, as they say, in tradition. We're going to be talking more about that with Michael and Mary Verlander on the other side of the break. I'd be grateful if you'd share us with a friend. That'd be amazing. Don't forget, 25-year conference coming up in Niagara Falls. Candace Owens, Bishop Strickland, Father Mateg, Raymond DeRorio. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
She has crossed the river of Jordan and walked through fields of gold. Her eyes behold the Maker, so I've been told. I'll love another. She will guide my hand. I'm dreaming of love.
Jesus Christ, welcome back to A Catholic Take, a bold synthesis of information and inspiration. I'm your host, Joe McClain. It's good to be on with you. We're talking with Michael and Mary Verlander, FatimaFarm.com, and we're going to be linking to Dreamin' of My Lover, which is their latest single, and they put it out on their YouTube channel, Fatima Farming. We encourage you to subscribe to that channel and share it. That'd be a wonderful, praise be to God. But welcome back to both of you. Michael, you and your wife made the commitment, went through the sacrifices even to kind of leave the city, get out into the country, and then do something special when it comes to not just living this culture within your own family, but then sharing it with your neighbors. Tell me about that process and that decision that you and your wife made.
We came out to the country, Joe, because we wanted ourselves and our family to grow up closer in touch with reality, closer to creation, closer to our Creator. And so we started with raised beds in the backyard, and now we've got a much larger garden growing right now, and things are growing abundantly, and we're busy during this summer season. But we also wanted to invite others to come share in the goodness that we enjoy here at the farm. So, like I said, the music begins in the living room, and so once a month, it started as trying to share the first Saturday devotion. So it started as a first Saturday event where we invited families over and we prayed a rosary together, and I told the story of Our Lady of Fatima and the apparitions to the children there in Portugal. And people would bring food and would enjoy a potluck feast. And then as time went on, would start a fire, and around the bonfire we would sing these old songs. The video started because so many people wanted to to know the music that we were singing. They wanted to sing along, and they said, "Is there any way we can find this?" So we put together a songbook. You can find that on our website, and also we started doing the videos so that families at home could learn the songs and sing along when they join us. So, and it started as something that was very much meant for our local community, but a lot of people from around the world literally have reached out and expressed their gratitude for what we're doing. I think probably the theme that I hear most is, it would be so wonderful if we did the same sort of thing in our community. How do we do it? And I give them the formula, which is invite friends over, pick a feast day, invite families, have them bring a dish to share, and once that happens, light the fire, and then start singing some simple songs together. And that's how it gets started.
But it must take 400 or 500 acres. You probably have to be incredibly wealthy and self-sufficient to pull this off, right, Michael?
No, Joe. When we were doing this, we were on it started on a quarter of an acre lot in downtown small town Georgia, and now we moved out to a farm. We have 14 acres now, but I think for the gathering, I mean, functionally, we're using maybe just 1 or 2 of those acres to pull off these gatherings together. We moved it to First Sunday because I was inspired by words from Maria von Trapp. She spoke of how she lived out her Sundays with her family in an old Catholic world in Europe, and how Sunday was a day that families would get together and dance and sing songs, and the children would play games. And Saturday evening, rather, was a time more of kind of a reverential, solemn preparation for Sunday coming up. So Dad would read the readings, and they would lay out their Sunday best clothes in preparation for Sunday. But Sunday was really the day where they celebrated the Lord's resurrection with each other in their communities. And I thought, well, that's perfect for us. Let's move it to First Sunday. And plus, when we tried to do it on First Saturday, it was proving difficult for us to meet the Saturday devotion that we wanted, with the praying of the Rosary and meditating on the mysteries of the Rosary, and attending Mass and receiving Holy Communion. So it seemed out of place and out of the spirit of penance that we're supposed to have with First Saturdays in the devotion of Our Lady of Fatima.
You know, one of the things I was going to say was, I've seen this many, many times in our audience. They'll say, well, especially when I talk about, say, the traditional Latin Mass communities, our family being members of an FSSP parish, you know, and there's a lot of people who can't get to a traditional Latin Mass community. They live in places where they're just nowhere near them, takes more than an hour to get to one, or what have you. And I see the model that you're demonstrating as a means of at least getting somewhat of an experience of the traditional Latin Mass community that we might take for granted in some places where we have, frequent access to them, where we can gather in our homes or gather on our properties and create this community that is rich with tradition, that is not just dancing, singing songs, having a barbecue, but is actually much more purposeful in that regard. Do you see this as sort of an alternative to that?
I do, Joe, because I mean, the music that you hear, that's that's from musicians, not just from our parish. It's from more than one parish. So I say the Fatima Family and Friends. The song that you hear was written by Andrew Tate, and a musician who often joins us. And we don't attend the same parish, and we may disagree on matters of church authority and the limits of obedience, but we can agree on something like good music. And we found that to be the case, that music is a uniting element. The way of beauty can unite members of various communities. And that's what you're hearing when you hear our music. And when you come to our gatherings, you see something similar.
Mary, we're going to be running out of time before you know it here. I wanted to ask you, what is your future in music? Is music going to be a part of your future? how much of the music that you have grown up enjoying and loving will carry on with you?
Hopefully all the folk songs that I know now, I'll remember and be singing them with my husband to our kids. And that's how I imagine we'll be, again, passing the music along. And I mean, that's about it. Just singing it with my children and teaching them to play the instruments. And I imagine that they'll be making friends and hopefully doing the same thing too.
Earlier, you mentioned that the kind of music that you play doesn't require you to be the best at it or hit the chords right every time or hit that note every time. I think I'm thinking of myself in that regard. But do you think it's possible for people to learn this type of music or music in general without that aptitude? In order to get, say, proficient at it. Or I mean, we're down to the last 60 seconds on the radio, so we can continue in the after show. But I'm just curious in your thoughts. Do you think people can learn this with some effort and willpower, or only the few called to true music proficiency?
Oh, no, it's anybody. When it comes to folk songs, it's anybody who can sing and play them.
I think I'm going to push back on that in the after show. I'm not sure I can, but we'll see. I do encourage everybody to check out the song Dreamin' of My Lover on their YouTube channel. We're going to link to it. Fatima Farming is the name of their YouTube channel, but go to their website, fatimafarm.com. I just love what they're doing. It's very inspirational, and there's something for all families in the Catholic faith to really glean something, and I want you to share it today. fatimafarm.com. We'll put a link to it in the show notes today. We'll continue the conversation in the after show. Go to thestationofthecross.com/ACT. God love you.
The Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network is dedicated to answering the critical need of access to quality, consistent, professional, and proven Catholic programming. We cannot rely on other media outlets to properly represent our church. Catholic radio reaches Catholics, non-Catholic Christians, and non-believers alike. As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent of your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported.
And we're back. Welcome to the after show, everyone.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Praise be to God. It's good to be back. Sorry, I was out yesterday. Jake was out too, by the way. So, in my defense, I wasn't the only one who abandoned.
I mean, I don't blame you for not wanting to show up if I can't be there, Joe. That's fine. Yeah. I
had a Sunday night out of nowhere. I was reading The Hobbit to my youngest son, and I couldn't even finish the chapter. All of a sudden, I couldn't breathe. Just like my face swelled, like I had some sort of reaction to something, in sinus infection, something, and I couldn't breathe, and literally didn't sleep. I mean, I think I laid down around 2:30, 2:45 in the morning. I finally tried to doze off a little bit, but it was just miserable, so I had to cancel yesterday's show as a result of that. But I did reschedule the guests, just so you know. I rescheduled. We're going to have... my brain it's not back to normal. What's his name? It's Joseph Smith. Thank you. From we're going to be talking about this rumors document coming out of Rome about the final solution to the traditional Latin Mass. We're going to be talking about that with Joseph Shaw. I said Smith. I meant Shaw. Thank you. Joseph Shaw. Joseph Smith is a totally different character.
I was going to make a Mormonism joke, but you talked
He didn't end well, Joseph Smith. He got the mob treatment in a jail cell.
Yeah.
But it did lead to Angel Studios, so there you go, folks. Have fun with that one. Anyway, I rescheduled, so we'll figure that out this week. Appreciate your patience on all of that. We'll have more for you to come. By the way, good morning. I just want to say good morning to everybody before we jump back on with the Verlanders. James 16897, good morning to you. Damon, Anna, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Mimi Sky. By the way, Anna, you say Bishop Strickland looks so peaceful. I got to say, I was just hanging out with him. He does. He does look very peaceful. And also, he invited me to go on pilgrimage with him in 2025, which I think I will do if it be God's holy will. So more information on that to come. Mike K., our friend, is going to be filling in for me next week. Looking forward to that. I'll be going to celebrate the death of my youth up at the Clear Creek Abbey. What are you laughing about there? But the The end of my youth.
Aren't you entering into what was it called? What did the ancients call it? The next phase after youth. Youth ends at 50, and then it's the next phase. So you're not even nearing old age yet, Joe.
Is it called geriatrics?
No,
because that's where I'm headed.
The ancients didn't think that happened until you hit like 90 or something like that. So
I don't know. Anyway, Mike K's going to be filling in. Praise be to God. Ought to be fun. Yvonne and Sharon, good morning to you. Praise be to God. Karen, Andy Bashaw. Tato is back. Eileen is back. Good morning, everybody. Nick the Mike. Becky Hansen. Glad to see you here. Thanks for being on the team. Jen Nugent is here. We have a lively crowd over on Facebook as usual. Colleen and Evelyn, Miriam. Good morning to you. Patrick is back. Not everyone can do what you do, Joe. God gives us all different gifts. That's what they need. That's why they need each other. Is that the excuse we're going with? Why I can't carry a tune nor understand timing, which is why I wanted to push back on Mary Verlander. Mary, welcome back. Good morning. Thanks for hanging out again. Appreciate having you here. But I'm going to treat you a bit like a hostile witness now because I honestly do not believe it is possible for knuckleheads like me to truly learn music. My kids, however, they seem to have the gift. They seem to have an aptitude, and I try to fan their flame as much as I can. I, however, could not get out of my own way when it comes to, like, I can play chords, but if you want me to switch chords in between a bar, you're asking way too much of me. There's no possibility of doing that and sing at the same time. No, sorry, can't be done. You have to accept in humility, Mary, that you are special and God gave you a gift. And you got to stop pretending that the rest of us plebeians will somehow be able to do what you do. It is impossible. You are special. Does that make sense?
Yes, I hear what you're saying. I've definitely come across other people who definitely can't carry a tune, can't hit pitches, can sort of play chords, can't switch them. So I haven't seen and experienced when I first started playing, it wasn't easy. I can't remember a time when I couldn't sing though, but I can say that back at college, I knew a boy who could not hit pitch at all and wanted to sing, but just couldn't until he found a friend. That was me. I helped him out and gave him little voice lessons. And by the end of the school year, everyone was kind of shocked. He's not a great singer yet, but he definitely has potential. He's been hitting pitches, leading chant for like the Salve Regina or something at the end of the rosary. And yes. And so I really think that if you put the effort into it, if you find someone who can help you, even if it is your children, you can go a long way with that. It might take months or years. And decades, the point, of course, you want to get as good as you can. But again, with these songs, the point isn't to sound spectacular or really to impress others. It's you're doing it because it's a good thing in itself.
Yeah, okay. Joe, you mentioned a time where the music that we would hear was from Pa, who would grab his fiddle and play, and the children on Little House on the Prairie would dance around and sing, and that environment encourages music because Pa probably wasn't a virtuoso, but I think nowadays when the exposure that we have to music is something like American Idol and Britain's Got Talent and all of that, where we see some of the best across the globe, and we conclude, well, I'm not a singer. Well, I guess I'm just not a musician. I'll let other people do that. And so people turn into more consumers of music rather than producers of music. And that's a fact of life today, and not just music. Why did we move out to the farm? We're trying to be more producers of our food rather than just consumers of our food as well. So there's many things that apply to that we're able to produce more things than consume. Centuries ago, the majority of the population were farmers. I think during the 1800s, I've seen numbers like 90% of people were farmers. Nowadays, it's more like 3%. And without being able to consume, what would we do? And we haven't embraced this life because, we're preppers, because of, what could happen in the future if the grid goes down and all the supply chain shut down and we don't have access to stores. But it's a spiritual activity as well, because when you eat the food that you produce yourself, it cultivates gratitude. And so it makes sense to turn to our Creator in thanks and to recognize the miracle of life and farming and give gratitude when we're able to enjoy it. Thanks be to God.
Yeah. I when I started hunting, I was already an adult and married with kids, and I felt part of it was because it was important for our kids to see, where does food come from? We don't get meat on a styrofoam plate with cellophane wrapped on top magically, right? Like someone has to kill the animal in order for us to enjoy the meat. And when we don't get our hands bloody in the process, then we can somehow disconnect reality from where food comes from, and we can say silly things like, how can you kill Bambi and not just go to the grocery store? Which is something that's been said to me on more than one occasion, which is weird. But so similarly, I can appreciate the need to demonstrate, to show, to reconnect the next generation back to food, because we live in a dystopian future now where corporate America decides how your food is processed and made, and farmers, specifically the Amish in particular, getting hammered by the feds for exchanging raw milk, for instance. It's just, we live in a weird world.
No, we do. And you've had some good guests on recently. I remember the fellow from Louisiana, the chicken farmer, and some of the trouble that he's gone through with cancellations and his devotion to the Sacred Heart. But they have an organization there. I don't know if he talked to you about it, but a PMA, a private membership association.
Yeah, we discussed that.
Where members of where members of this association are able to exchange goods and services without nearly the typical interference from the government. And it's I think it's a really good idea in a way in the future for communities like ours.
Yeah, I've been looking into that more and more. We're hoping to get onto some land and get out of the big city. At least that's been part of my dream for a long time. And we've looked into those types of things. It seems like a lot of homesteaders, small farming communities, and those that are trying to reestablish cultures like the one you're trying to do have to find creative ways to sort of circumvent some of these regulations. But still, they're having issues. There's lots of reports out on that story for sure. Hey, by the way, let me give out some more shout-outs here. Nick the Mike, good morning to you. Mike Peaches is back. Sci-Fi, Honey West, good morning. Cindy K. Over on the Rumble, if you're on Rumble and you never commented before, make today that day. Be a part of the team and let us know where you're from. We'd love to have you here. Praise be to God. Jane Steves, good morning to you. Asks a very, very interesting question. Does anyone know if Michael Landon actually played the fiddle, or did he just fake it for the show? That's a good question. I haven't the slightest clue. It seemed like he was playing anyway. So I don't know. Maybe he learned. Let's see here. Lori, good morning to you. Daniel Hyatt, good morning to you. Patty, welcome to the team. Welcome back. Good morning to you. Thanks for hanging out. Normand, good morning to you. Mimi, good morning. Rachel Jordan, Linda, good morning to you. Junior Barra, Don Paddock, thank you for hanging out with us today over on Facebook. And Christine, by the way, I agree. Mary is very inspirational. Praise be to Jesus. In spite of her wishful thinking that people like myself could someday carry a tune, nonetheless, we do agree she is very, very inspirational. And you had to have watched Little House on the Prairie, Mary, right? Like you had to have, right? Like you're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it, yes. I haven't watched it yet. I've read it several times, though.
Dad. Don't ever watch the later seasons. They were horrible. They're just trash. Just throw those away. It's only the early seasons that are any good in Little House on the Prairie. Take my word for that. Praise be to God.
By the way, fiddle experts confirm that Michael Landon did not play the fiddle and probably never even took a single lesson based on how bad the miming was. That's what the experts say.
You are blowing my mind right now. He did not actually play. He looked like he was playing it. What?
According to most critics and experts, it was obvious that he did not really play the violin.
It was obvious, they say. It was obvious.
People are saying if you watch, there's scenes where he just takes it out of the case and starts to play without tuning it or rosining up the bow. You know?
What's wrong? But it was already tuned. He put it away tuned, obviously.
Yeah, that's how that works. Yes,
That's how that works. Just go with it.
Yeah, I can see you've taken fiddle lessons.
I guess this proves my point that there are people who are called and gifted, and then there's the rest of us. Is this an argument for predestination? I'm wondering. It might be. It might be.
So are you saying you need to just mime the guitar, Joe, and I'll play behind?
I do.
I'll hide behind the curtain and play.
My kids, especially my son John Paul, who really truly has an aptitude for music. He seems to be able to pick up almost anything. Like he's basically self-taught on the fiddle. He's self-taught on the mandolin, the guitar, and even the piano. I mean, all of my kids are really gifted, generally speaking. Even the I call it the balrog. It's called the bodhran. I think they call it the bodhran, the Celtic drum. I call it the balrog. But anyway, like no matter what they pick up, they just pick it up. It's just like it just snaps, and they understand it almost not quite instantaneously, but close. Whereas I'm like, I have no clue how to do it. Like I'm so lost the entire time. It's so pathetic. And they try. My son especially. He's like, Dad, it's just 3 easy chords. That's all it is. I'm like, yeah, but you're switching half through the bar. Like my brain can't do that. I'm sorry, just not going to work.
Joe, you switch your camera halfway through the segment when I'm trying to give a different view.
And how many times have I messed that up?
Surely you can learn how to do it with a guitar.
There's just one button I got to push, and 90% of the time I hit the fade to black next to it. So, yeah, no, I shouldn't be trusted with any switching going on at all, ever. Now, I did want to ask this, Michael. It seems to me, though, like, let's talk about traditional hymns for a sec, okay? Of course, I went to a Novus Ordo parish for many, many years, and a lot of the Marty Hagen stuff is just sappy or whatever. Put that to the side for a second. More traditional hymns. It seems to me that whoever set those hymns, whoever wrote them or set them to music, wanted to be in the middle ground where it's easier for everyone to sort of sing. Or have I got that opposite? Is it the newer stuff that's middle ground and the older stuff is? Help me understand. What is the more traditional hymns? Was that set more for choir, more for like monastic life, or for lay folk to participate?
I think when you're thinking of the traditional hymns, something like I don't know, the popular Tantum Ergo, that's written for the common folk to be able to sing. It doesn't have the wide range and the difficult rhythmic patterns that a lot of the modern music sing. A lot of the modern music that we hear in church. Which is more imitating, I think, music from Broadway, and it sounds like Disney sometimes. That's pretty complicated stuff.
Yeah. As someone who picks pretty much all the music every Sunday for our choir, the older hymns and hymn tunes, not necessarily, when we talk about that, they're only from the most recent few centuries. It's not like a chant like the Salve Regina that goes back way farther. But yes, they are meant to be fairly simple. Some of them are even based on older tunes and melodies that people would already have been somewhat familiar with. They're sung in styles that people are familiar with. And the church has always kind of ridden that line of the church doesn't want modern current style, or at least traditionally, didn't want modern current styles to influence the music too much. And there were times when, even before recent days, there were times in the 1500s when chant was kind of all but forgotten because this hip new form of polyphony was taking over with all these fancy choirs singing it, and chant, the official music of the church, kind of went by the wayside, and the church kind of had to say, you need to stop singing these fancy new styles and get back to the basics. And it happened in the 1800s, too, where music got operatic and the people couldn't sing along with it, and it was overtaking the proper, dignified music of the church, and the church said, stop with the opera and bring back, the traditional music. And that's kind of what the the Credo and the Gloria and the Kyries, those are supposed to be on the simpler side compared to the elaborate Gregorian chant, so that people are better able to memorize it. So the church has always encouraged music that's simple and easy for the people to sing along with, because it's important for people to sing together. Even the people who can't really sing very well, it's important for them to kind of take part in it. And when you hear a full crowd that's singing things, you don't notice that some people are not that great at it, because everyone's singing together and they're all, putting their heart into it. And that means a lot more than, a really excellent performance where the people aren't really meaning what they're singing. At least in my experience with choir directing.
Mm.
Yeah, in a lot of the hymnals that we see, at the very bottom, you'll see something like a Sicilian melody or Welsh melody or something like that, and those are just folk tunes. Mm-hmm. So these are lyrics, sacred lyrics, put to a folk melody, and a lot of people are surprised that classical composers like Beethoven or Aaron Copland, they take folk melodies mm-hmm. and turn them into huge symphonies. Some people, a lot of people think that the classical composer actually came up with those melodies, but they've just taken folk melodies and put them to huge orchestras.
Yeah,
and it says something about folk music. It is a music of the people. It wasn't written for public consumption, so it's not pop, but it's music that tells stories and expresses sentiments of love for another person, love of God, love of land, and that folk music it's got very deep roots, and because of that, it kind of stands apart from other kinds of music.
And you can see several stories of the saints, the ones with musical aptitude. This was something they did on purpose, was they would take folk melodies, popular melodies, and they would write sacred and very orthodox lyrics in order to help people memorize the truths of the faith. I forget who it was just recently. We just had a saint who, that comes up in his story. Is that
I was going to bring up the opposite side of that same coin, Jake, about Arius using bar songs, tavern tunes, to spread his heresies around the Mediterranean, because the sailors would come in because they learned these tunes, and then they would carry them to the next port of call, which spread that far and wide. Which is part of the reason why I asked the Verlanders to even have this conversation, because there's the power in music mm-hmm. to change people's hearts and minds. Look how much Taylor Swift tries to change the politics through her concerts and her craziness. So that tells me that the opposite is also true, that we should be able to leverage music to ingratiate culture with the good, the true, and the beautiful, to basically the antidote to all of that. JFVK kind of touches on this. He says, did you know that music in heaven was Lucifer's job? No wonder he's corrupted the music on earth into demonic, chaotic noise. I didn't know that. I don't know. Where would we get that? Where would we get that Lucifer's job was set the music in heaven? That'd be an interesting tidbit to dive into that a little bit, I suppose. But music is dark in most occasions these days. It's dark and debauched, and it's just really corrupted. So there needs to be a sort of a revival of sorts when it comes to music, which is so. Mary, I wanted to ask you this: what about original music? I mean, Michael, I suppose you too, but because this song, it seems like it's an original piece, right? Is this a cover tune? This "Dreaming of My Lover," or is that you said that was written by your friend? So what about original music? What goes into writing original music that kind of accomplishes what we're talking about here?
That's a very good question, because when we're talking about folk music, we keep on saying it's old, it's traditional, it's been passed down from ages to ages. But then you think about, well, hold on a second, I've written some songs, my friend has written some songs, Andrew has just written his first song, though he's also written tunes as well. And you can't just cast those aside as, oh, well, that came from a year ago. You can't sing or listen to that automatically because it's modern, since it's come from today. It's more of the atmosphere and the reason why it was written. And the songs that I've written and that Andrew has also done it's based on folk music. You're not just ripping off of folk music, but it's imitative. And so I think that makes a huge difference. A part of what makes folk music what it is exactly what Dad was saying, is that it's men and women in some cases writing about life and the things that really matter in life, whether it be true love, love for land, a war, missing home, or friendship. And what Andrew did, he wrote that song, and it isn't something that he himself has experienced, but it's something that I think everyone can connect with, losing someone. But it isn't a song of despair, which I was really impressed with. With a lot of pop songs, I think it's you can fall into despair. It's the attitude of some of these dark songs or something kind of meet you in the depth and the shallow of where you're despairing. This song can lift you up because in the chorus, he's dreaming of his lover who he believes is in that glory land. And in the end, he ends up walking with that lover in the glory land. It's a very hopeful song, despite the sad story, since it's someone he lost.
I was thinking of the Song of Songs when I was listening to that tune. I felt like there were some parallels there. Are there any?
With the song, well, of course, with the Song of Songs, it's a very physical, graphic metaphor of the love that our Lord has for us in the church. And so I think if you're speaking of love in human terms, rightly considered and properly ordered, it ought to reflect the love that God has for his people. And so the Song of Songs is kind of the biblical green light to write well-ordered songs about love.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon Joseph, good morning to you, says anything can be used for good or negative. Anything. That's true. We should use all things for good. That's 1 Corinthians. St. Paul makes it clear that whether we eat or sleep or drink or do whatever we do it all for the glory of God. So I would agree that all things in life that we do ought to be approached from that perspective. And music, but I think music is a powerful tool because music plays such a part in our life. Like we go to work or we come home from work, we want to listen to music, we want to, forget about the day or whatever. We kind of get lost in music, or we hear music in movies. Think about how music is used in movies to shape our emotions, to help tell that story. Think about jingles in commercials, for instance. Pola Chicho, my friend, my old buddy, who is a veteran of the radio biz. How many times have we had radio jingles to help promote our shows, and or to help you memorize the phone number to the plumber or whatever. It's just, music is such a powerful tool because it elicits imagery in your mind. You don't even have to have visuals with it to have this image in your mind, the story play out in your mind. So because of the power of music, I think it's an important tool for us to really leverage in a powerful way, which is, I don't want to get too far off the topic, but in a tangential way, they're about to meet in Indianapolis for this Eucharistic Congress, and some of my criticisms of this effort to revive the lay folk in their understanding and acceptance of what the church has always taught about the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist. It's like the gathering is fine and all. I don't mind Catholics gathering together and doing big events. I mean, that's fine. Praise be to God. But is there any conversation about the music, the sappy music that happens in Novus Ordo parishes all over the world every day? Like, if I had $1 for every time I had to sing some sappy hymn, I'd be as rich as George Soros, for crying out loud. Like, how can you have one conversation about we need to revive and re-educate and re-inspire the lay folk when it comes to this teaching? Great. I'm all on that team. But then you don't have a serious and sober conversation about, well, let's talk about some of the things going down here. Why aren't we doing kneeling on the tongue at the altar rail again one more time? Why isn't that part of the conversation? Why aren't we talking about the music? I mean, Jake, am I off here? But it just seems like every time you go to a Novus Ordo parish, you get these very sappy kind of who knows what banal tunes.
I will say that even some of the older tunes from the 19th and early 20th century, even those have a bit of a sappiness to them. They can be, sometimes it's hard to ride that line between, really excellent music and kind of when it becomes trite. If you're trying to make it catchy and easy to sing and easy on the ears, I know quite a few. I'm not among them, but I know quite a few people who absolutely can't stand. If you've heard the Mass of the Angels, Mass 8, the Missa de Angelis. That's the Kyrie from the Mass of the Angels, and I know some people who, because it's overplayed and because it's a little bit more modern sounding than a lot of other chant masses, people think that one is kind of too sappy and cheesy and corny of a sound. I disagree. I think it's good in context when it's not overplayed. I think that the music that's common to the Novus Ordo has just gone along with the trends of modern music and the trends specifically of very bland, easy listening mid-century music. And it's the kind of thing where if it had a better, sometimes the melody would actually be fine if it had well-written text to it. And then other times you have a pretty, a decent text, and it gets set to a very, very, trite melody. It's tough because, again, I have seen examples from well before the council, if you want to blame the council for it. Well before the council, I've seen some tunes that are kind of just a little bit like, this kind of just sounds like the early 1900s version of a pop song. This just sounds like popular early 1900s music, which still is better than a lot of modern pop music for sure, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily the greatest, church hymn ever. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but yes, for the most part, the modern stuff it's not particularly tuneful. It's actually more difficult for people to sing, especially these ones that modern, composers put together that are, again, they're like show tunes. They're not like actual like singable folk tunes. I like the way you said that, Michael. It's not written from a grassroots, actual participation of the people, mentality. It's written from I'm so special, look what I can compose for the mass mentality, which is not how it's supposed to be treated.
No.
I agree. I think we've entered a time in the church where we think about going to Mass and what we can get out of the Mass. And rather than thinking of we go to Mass and what we ought to put into it in justice and just worship to God. So Mass is about what is justly given to God, not so much what can we get out of it. But once we've entered that subjective mode of what can we get out of it, then the musicians and the those who are in charge of music selection and doing the music, they start competing for the sensibilities and people's likes and dislikes, and they start choosing music that more people like rather than thinking about what is due to God. So regarding the Eucharistic revival, I'm not sure how they're going about doing it, but generally, where in the church today do we find the faithful who have the greatest belief in the real presence? I think it's in the traditional parishes. So what are they doing? They're receiving Holy Communion on the tongue. The priest is not faced towards the people. It's not about the people. It's about God. We're all oriented towards God together. What kind of music is traditional, solemn, reverent music? I think we ought to be taking notes from the traditional parishes and saying, okay, I think this is how we cultivate belief in the real presence, and we can revive a true belief in the Blessed Sacrament. as it's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And it's about what we can give our Lord rather than what we can get out of it.
Amen. Amen. Here, I just found that. Can I just share this on the screen here real quick? First things, I just saw this article, the top 10 worst hymns of all time. I'm going to go through this very quickly here. Coming in at number 10 is the worst. Like every time I think of the worst hymns, this is the one that I always think of. Pescador de los Hombres. Lord, when you stood by the seashore. Go look at the words in this song. You find the Lord, and then you leave. Why in the world would anybody ever do this? It makes no sense. Like, I finally found the Lord. I shall go and find other seas. What are we talking about? Like, are you out of your mind? Like, good grief, go and sell everything you have and buy that field, for crying out loud. Or that seashore, whatever. Anyway, number 10, Pescador de los Hombres. Number 9, I am the bread of life. No, you're not. No, you aren't. Jesus is the bread of life. You are not the bread of life. Number 8, on eagle's wings, and I will raise you up. Anyway, number 7, Pan de Vida. I'm just going to get this wrong. Pan de Vida Cuerpo del Señor. Oh, my. Mea culpa, mea culpa. Anyway, number 6, sing a new song. Oh, man, this is some hippie stuff right there. I think of, like, sing a new song. I get the vibe of, like, Star Trek fight scenes from the 1960s. That's what comes to mind. Number 5, We Remember. Marty Hagen. Number 4, Here I Am, Lord, by Dan Shute. Number 3, City of God. Again, Dan Shute. But Marty Hagen will not be outdone because he comes in at number 2 with Gather Us In. But coming in at number 1, up 10 spots to number 1, Son of God, Hear His Holy Word by James Theme. The worst. Do you guys think that those are the worst songs, the worst hymns ever? I don't know. But number 10 is like definitely my pet peeve of the century.
So here's where I'll say something, is that if it wasn't so overplayed at the Novus Ordo Mass, Gather Us In is almost a great little drinking song.
What?
It's got a nice catchy melody.
Does
it? Like, imagine a bunch of sailors singing that with slightly, maybe slightly less sappy, that generation text. That's not a bad melody for a drinking song. Not so much for the holy sacrifice of the Mass. So you see, that's where I say, like, you don't want to oversimplify it as everything played at Novus Ordo is objectively horrible and bad. Everything sung at the traditional Latin Mass is objectively perfect and ideal. Like, that's the thing.
Okay, so can I be critical of St. Thomas Aquinas for just 1 second? What is the Pink Sunday song that we sing every Lent? Every Pink Sunday we sing the song. Every third Sunday of Lent. What is the song? St. Thomas wrote it, but the tune. Every time I hear the tune, I also think of William Shatner fighting lizards in the desert.
Dun, 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 dun,
yes,
dun, dun,
thank
dun,
you.
Dun, dun, dun.
Tell me that does not sound like a Star Trek tune in the fight scene of William Shatner go mano a mano with the lizard man. Well before InfoWars ever said there were lizard people, was William Shatner fighting in the desert with a lizard person. That's a
classic.
I don't. And will I go to hell if I criticize Thomas Aquinas? I hope not, because I love the man, but just not that tune. Anyway. Michael and Mary, do you have any favorites from the hit list of bad tunes that you wanted to share?
No, as you were reading off that list, I had forgotten of those hymns, so it was a little bit of a flashback, post-traumatic stress syndrome. Yes, I think a bit.
That's exactly right.
But you're right. I mean, the one you said sounds like a drinking song. I imagine you on the bow run playing along with that one. I think it's perfect for the bow run.
Yeah, perfect tune. Well, and we're going to run out of time here. We're almost out of time, but can I just ask about that too? Like music at Mass. Tell me about what's appropriate, what's not. The church has gone to the organ. I don't personally like the organ. I don't love that sound. I'm more of a stringed instrument guy. So why the organ? Why certain instruments? Why not other instruments? How does that play? Mary, I don't know. Maybe you want to give us your thoughts on that?
I know a little bit about this. One of the biggest rules is no percussion is allowed in church, at least at traditional churches that I've been to. The rule is no percussion. That's why piano isn't allowed in the church where we go to, because it's a percussion instrument. It's hammers hitting strings. It's a percussion motion. And that's why they would have the organ instead, which is similar to the piano, very different sound. And I've also heard, I'm not sure where the line is or all the rules that regard this, because I have heard stringed instruments like violin up in the choir loft. I've heard some brass instruments like trumpet or French horn up in the choir loft for special occasions like weddings or big feast days. I've heard cello or harp. I tend to really like that when that gets brought up because it's very special, and for me it makes me think of celestial choirs. But I know that one of the biggest rules is no percussion. That's what
no percussion. I used to go to a parish that will remain nameless. We'll change the names to protect the innocent. French horn was standard fare. Piano definitely on the ticket. I want to say they had a set of drums. I want to say they also did the bells. They had like they're not cowbells necessarily, but like the bells with the handles on them. So they had a bell choir. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, get electric guitars, acoustic guitars, all that was in play. Nothing. Why not violin? Why not cello? I like that sound. It's a beautiful sound. So it seems kind of strange to me why some parishes will use this plethora of instruments, and then you can find sort of the opposite. I grew up in the Church of Christ, which is not a part of the Catholic Church, obviously, but they refused all instruments. All instruments were bad. Only the human voice could be allowed. There's no middle ground. There seems to be no middle ground. What would you say, Mike?
If I were to draw the line, I would say those instruments that we associate with secular music, we ought to keep those out. So electric bass, electric guitar, drum sets, these are instruments that we associate with secular music, particularly pop music. But other instruments that can be edifying, that is lifting our minds and hearts to divine, which is what prayer is. So incorporating the harp and other instruments, I think it's good and okay. I think personally, I love a cappella. I think oftentimes the organ can be overpowering, but my personal taste in this regard, I think, is all a cappella, and keep it with the human voice. So what you hear in a cathedral, if you were anywhere else, you could bring that beautiful sound, even if you didn't have an organ. It would still sound solemn and beautiful and appropriate, even though a rural church doesn't have a magnificent organ.
Amy Martin, 68, welcome to the team. Robert DeBruce, welcome to the team. Amy Martin says, I prefer no music at Nova Sordo's Sunday Mass. It is usually too loud and a performance and too prolonged after distribution of the Eucharist. I like quiet time for reflection.
Yes.
Well, I would vote for more of that. Los Creoles says, low Mass is based. Very intimate. Nothing worse sitting in front of someone who cannot sing. Were you just behind me this past Sunday, Los Creole? Is that what are you trying to say something, Los Creole, about my singing? Anyway, God bless you and God love you. Thank you, Los Creole, for chiming in today. Mary and Michael, very grateful for your time today. Thank you for being on with us, sharing your passion, your music, your family, and your community with the rest of us. It's always a great inspiration to us. If you haven't done so, make sure to check out FatimaFarm.com and go to their YouTube channel, like, subscribe, and share. We'd be grateful. God bless you. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow morning.